if I understand correctly from you Americans, your docudramas about your ancient Wild West, you had these things called saloons, which some would call a pub. You had these half doors. You could see the person's shoes under the door. If they were tall enough, you'd see their face peeking up over the doors. You'd have these half doors, and then they go in through the half doors. And they go up to this bar and say, "Hello, is this the saloon?" Of course, the first thing they say to you is, "Hello, stranger, who are you and what are you doing here?" And you'd say, of course, "Oh, I'm very sorry, I thought this was a pub." "It's a saloon bar, is that not a type of pub? I'm not from around here, you see." I suppose I should call you stranger as well. I know I'm the stranger who's just come into town, but you're all strangers to me as well, so I should say, "Hello, stranger who runs the bar, how are you?" Which is a meaningless question. If you ask someone for the very first time, "How are you?" you need to have a baseline to compare that to. Normally, if you've asked someone, "How are you?" it's not usually the first time. You know them very well. So they can say, "Oh, I'm better than last time," or "less good than last time," or about the same. Your first time you come in, they say, "How are you?" And then they'll say, "Oh, I'm a bit better, thanks." They don't know what that means. Bit better than what? No. So there should be an international baseline of how are you-ness, whereby, I suppose there kind of is. There's the standard human normal body temperature of 98.7 degrees, and then there's the normal average weight, all those things, a system of standards. So if you say, "How are you?" they'll say, "Better than last time," when there isn't a last time. Just think back to what the normal standard level of wellness is for a human being. They'll say, "Well, how's your temperature?" They'll say, "It's a degree above last time." There wasn't the last time. You don't want to be rude and say, "I've never spoken to you before. There wasn't the last time." No. Instead of doing that and causing offence, you just compare to the average normal state for a human. You have a pin to the wall beside the price list. It's as important to you as the thing that you use to measure out a standard measure of whiskey, an important tool of the trade. So that's your saloon. You have the saloon is the bar, the lounge downstairs. So I presume if it's a tavern, the upstairs is some sort of a bed and breakfast place. Now, is the tavern the whole place, encompassing the bed and breakfast accommodation and the pub? Or is the tavern just the bed and breakfast part? It's probably the whole thing, I suppose. It's a tavern. You come here, you drink, and then you go to bed, and then you get up. I don't know, do they have breakfast? I say bed and breakfast. I can't imagine them serving breakfasts in one of them Wild West places. I can't imagine it. You go upstairs to the tavern and have a nice sleep, and then you get up about 8 o'clock in the morning. Surely you don't expect all the people who were in the bar last night to be still there waiting to have breakfast with you. No. Maybe your man who owns it makes you breakfast, I don't know. Maybe he makes a cold platter, sliced ham or tongue or something, and you have that. I don't know. What do they even have for breakfast in the Wild West? I don't know. They don't really cover that. They don't really show the mornings in Western movies. They show whatever time they're in the bar, which seems to be much of the day, to be honest. We mock stereotypical Irish movies and soaps where they're in the pub all the time. You go to the Wild West, the whole thing revolves around the pub. Even the sheriff, if he has anything to contribute at all, he goes into the bar, into the tavern, and he says what he has to say there. He says, "Oh, I'm looking for this fella. There's this fella in town, he's a troublemaker and I'm looking for him. Is he here? Because if someone is in town, he'd be here. Where else would he be? He doesn't have a house. Unless he has a holiday home or some sort of a timeshare apartment in the town. I think I'd know about that. I'm the sheriff. I know everybody. It's not a very big town. There's only 64 people. 65 if you count the fella who's staying in the tavern tonight. You count him, you probably do. How many is he? He's 1, so that's, what did I say, 64 plus 1, that's 65. Or did I say that the 64 includes the 1? I don't know. Whatever. It's just an example anyway. Just an example of the numbers. Those westerns, they do have hair colours, I presume. They're probably in a salon. So if someone comes in from out of town And I say, hello, can you direct me to the saloon, please? But they've got a weird accent from out of town. You can't really tell. Are they asking about the saloon or the salon? You don't want to offend them, because if you offend someone in a place like that, you can end up in a gunfight. You go to the OK Corral or something and you have a gunfight if you offend anyone. You have to be very careful there. So if an outsider is in town and say, hello, could you please direct me to your local saloon? We could be saying salon or saloon. You have to make a snap decision. Does he look like he's in need of a haircut? Then I'll direct him to the salon. Does he look like he's particularly thirsty, or perhaps an alcoholic? I suppose I should direct him to the saloon rather than the salon. If it's the latter, if I don't want to be the fella who makes him fall off the wagon, so maybe I should direct him to the salon instead. But then what if he realises I'm intentionally not directing him to the saloon? He might start a fight with me. I don't want to be in a fight today. I can't be having a fight every time I go out. Much as I like the lifestyle where you can sort everything out by either killing or being killed, sometimes I just need to get on with my day. I'd have errands to do. Have to go and see a man about a dog. Then I have to go and see a man about my cows. Ask him if he can come and look at my cows because he's my vet. Well, he's my cow's vet. I have a doctor for my own medical needs, but he's my cow's vet. But I have responsibility for my cow's medical decisions. Well, no, I don't want to be directing this man to his death. I don't want him to fall off the wagon and send him to a saloon if that's what he's looking for. But if he's just looking for a saloon because he's not an alcoholic, he's just thirsty, then that's fine. Although, if you're thirsty, alcohol dehydrates you. I wonder, does the saloon serve non-alcoholic beverages? Coca-Cola was around in the late 1800s. I don't think they'd be going, hello, I don't want a beer today or a whiskey. I want a bottle of that soft drink with vegetable extracts. That's all the rage now. And I have it in a glass bottle with delicious watery juice spilling out of it like it's been sitting in ice for the past week, which seems unlikely. You're in the Wild West. You don't have refrigerators. Do you have ice? I'm talking about in the summer now when there's no ice provided by the weather. Are they all drinking warm beer? Maybe that's why they all drink whiskey. The whiskey probably doesn't need to be that cold. But they're not doing that on the rocks then, is that right? So whiskey on the rocks wasn't invented until either the refrigerator came along or enough people moved to northern regions of America, such as Alaska, to discover all the things they could do with ice if the ice was around long enough. And then how would that help? They set up a colony in Alaska and they all start doing things with ice, putting it in their beverages and things. What are they going to do then? Go and tell the rest of America, oh, there's this great ice stuff. You should all get yourselves a cold climate and do the ice thing in your beverages. No, they still have to wait for the refrigerator to be invented. That's not going to help them at all. So no, if someone comes up to you and they say, hello, I'm looking for the saloon, and you're not sure if it's the salon or the saloon, how do you assess whether he needs a haircut? Because he's from another part of the country, possibly. You have different fashions in different parts of the country. How would you know about that? And I don't think they had magazines in those days. If they did, you'd be more likely to come across them in the salon than in the saloon. So I suppose if you know where the salon is, it is likely that you've read any magazines that exist. But the magazines don't exist, so that's nonsense too. So that's bringing us nowhere. I know what you're thinking there. You're thinking, I wonder what this podcast is. Into your head. That sounds educational. I don't particularly like education, but I know it's good for me. It's like when you eat brown bread, you feel good about yourself. So if I listen to something that appears to be educational, I can feel like I'm doing something worth my while, even if it turns out to be a pile of shit. That's what you're thinking. You think, I'll put this on anyway. It's like the brown bread of the podcast world. Into your head. That sounds good. I want stuff going into my head. even if it's disgusting brown bread or porridge or something. Well, I draw the line at porridge, actually, no. People who don't like brown bread can just about tolerate eating it. They put jam on it or something. But no, porridge, no. Porridge, you either like it or you don't. And if you don't like it, there's no eating porridge. That's not a thing. That's a bit much. There are people, strangely enough, who put a spoon of jam in their porridge. Now, are those the people who like porridge or the people who don't like porridge? Because I think those are the people who hate porridge, but they're forcing it into themselves and they're adding a spoon of liquid sugar into it to make it palatable. You're no better than the people who drink coffee with cream and sugar in it, normal people. You're making yourself eat the porridge, but you're putting jam or something in it. But you're not a porridge consumer at all. Don't get all high and mighty about that. No. A bowl of porridge, incidentally, has about 10 million calories in it. The reason you eat it is because it gives you tons of energy. So if you're not going to go for a big long run up a mountain after breakfast, you've no business eating that at all. You're just eating fatness. That's what you are. You might as well be just eating your own fat. Except it's worse than that, because if you're eating your own fat, at least there would be a vicious circle. You wouldn't be ingesting any more of it. It's like drinking your own piss. Well, is it? Wait a minute, because when you drink your own urine, you keep drinking your own urine, eventually it's poisoning you. Is the same true of eating your own fat? I don't know. Suppose this segment brings up more questions than it answers, to be fair. So you probably realise now this isn't an educational podcast. You're going to learn nothing. Well, you might learn something, but for everything you learn, you'll have 10 more questions added to it. So for everything that you learn, you're unlearning stuff as well. Well, does it count as unlearning? No. You're not unlearning. You're coming across stuff that you don't know or don't understand. So you're finding out more about how many. Oh, no, that's nonsense too. Look, it's not an educational podcast. It's just me talking shit for an hour or so and then editing out all the bits where my mouth makes disgusting noises. I'm afraid you've been sadly misled by your own. Well, I suppose you're not misleading yourself. This has been a misunderstanding. Something can go into your head without it being educational. Air goes into your head every day. That doesn't mean it's educational. Food goes into your head every day. That's not educational. I know fish is considered brain food, but it's not educating you directly. No. Well, this was a waste of time, wasn't it? That's great. It's wasted 6 minutes and 44 seconds. 48 now. That's great. Well, it's not great. I'm going to listen back to this later and think, oh Christ, what am I doing? That's what I'm going to think later. But right now I'm thinking, that's great. That's 6 minutes of stuff that I can cram in somewhere, crowbar it in somewhere. I don't know. I don't know. Do you know? You probably don't. Do you? No. No, you don't. So that's porridge for you. It's a load of shit. If you're listening to this in the production suite of a live televised wrestling event, I'd like you to try the following experiment, please. If you don't mind, and if it doesn't take away from your responsibilities or put anyone in any danger, well, any further danger, any danger further than the normal danger you expect from an event where there's two fat people throwing each other around and climbing up on the ropes like it's some sort of a farm gate and then jumping down on the other fella who for some reason doesn't manage to get out of the way. How does that work? You watch WWW wrestling. You see this fella. He'll climb up on the ropes. He'll get right up to the top rope. He'll make a big show of it and everyone's cheering. He's standing on the rope with his hands outstretched, ready to jump and pounce on the other fella who's in the ring. Why would the other fella not just get out of the way? Can you not see that coming? That's ridiculous. That's like one of those cheap horror movies where you're walking along a road and someone, big scary car or a truck or something passes you by, and then it comes to a stop for no reason, and you see it turning around, and it's going to come back and drive straight at you and run you over. You're walking on the road, just get off the road, just move sideways into a ditch. No, when you're a pedestrian in a movie and a car comes straight at you, don't start just running in the same direction that the car is travelling in and trying to outspeed it. Move to the side. Cars can't move sideways. You're not going to just suddenly turn all your wheels 90 degrees to the right and go into the ditch and run you over sideways. That's nonsense. No. So if that happens to you in real life, you're walking along a road at night, out in the middle of nowhere, or perhaps you're in a car. Steven Spielberg's first ever movie, I forget what it was called, a low budget movie. This fella, he's a businessman or something on a trip, and he was driving on the road trip through a mountainous region. And the whole film is about him being chased by this faceless, huge, articulated truck that keeps bearing down on him, threatening to run him over and kill him. You never see the driver, and it keeps bearing down on your man, and he eventually outwits him after an hour and a half of driving. I suppose it's harder if you're in a car. He was in a car being chased by this thing. He can't just suddenly go sideways into the ditch. You have more control over that than the truck, surely. I suppose that's why he won out in the end. I know, if you imagine that movie, but instead of a truck, you're a pedestrian. In fact, your man should have just abandoned his car. That film could have been over a lot more quickly if he had had the guts to just abandon his car. For one thing, it was Steven Spielberg's first movie. It was very low budget. So he should have been more than happy to have the star travelling on foot. That would have cut the cost even further. Get rid of that car. The first time you see this truck bearing down on you, well, maybe the second time, you realise something's going on. You realise you have to have a plan for this. And the plan isn't going to be just sitting in this car letting this fella bear down on me. I'll get out of the car. I'll walk along the side of the road. Now, over where I am in my part of the world, if you're a pedestrian, you're supposed to walk on the right side of the road. If there's no footpath, you walk on the right side of the road, facing into the traffic. You can see it coming. Of course, this fella's in America, so he would walk on the left side of the road and he'd see the traffic coming in the opposite direction. Except no, he'd be coming up behind him. Oh, that's right, so that doesn't really matter. You'd hear the lorry bearing down on him. You wait until it's nearly there and then you move. You take a 90-degree turn, move to the side. A lorry isn't going to be able to move sideways and chase you, so you just disappear into a ditch somewhere. And then game over. All done. Movie's over. An extra short movie. It's going to be great anyway, either way. It's Steven Spielberg. As we know now, everything he does turns to gold, so he could have just made a 5-minute movie out of it. It would be more like a cartoon than a movie. It would be over within 5 minutes. If it has a side feature, submit it to some film festival, 5-minute thing, barely cost a cent to make, but it would still do the job. He'd still have the same Steven Spielberg. 6 months after that, he'd be straight on to Jaws and everything else. And still the same movie, just not 90 minutes of this nonsense. That's how you make that. So no, if you're a pedestrian and you're getting chased by a car, trying to outrun the car, that's stupid. You can't outrun a car, you're not that fast. But you can outturn a car, you can move sideways, or even better, move almost slightly towards the car, but not directly. Turn around, start running towards the car, but turn just slightly, a couple of degrees off to one side. The car isn't going to be able to turn after you for that. They'll have to make nearly a full U-turn to catch you then, just as you pass it. No. Cars are not like those alien things that everyone sees that goes straight up and straight down and makes 90-degree turns, goes around in weird patterns. No. Cars have their limits. And most people on this planet know how a car works, they know how it turns. It should not be a surprise to you that when a car comes up behind you, there's no way you can just outrun it by running in a straight line in the same direction. No, you turn. Imagine you're driving and imagine you're holding the steering wheel, if it helps, and think of yourself as turning the steering wheel 90 degrees to the right and let your body imagine what would happen if you turned the steering wheel 90 degrees to the right on a person. You don't have wheels, you're just a person, so you can just turn to the right, and then you turn to the right, and then you're free. You're free. And the car that's chasing you is gone, or it's whatever. I don't know if you can hear that in the background. You probably can't. It's not a wasp. There's still no signs of any wasps in here. But I was just in the ensuite bathroom. I can hear the cistern refilling. So that's good. That's good. You're probably thinking, why is that good? Well, that's how the water comes in so you can flush it. It's good that it's refilling. I know it doesn't affect you directly or benefit you in any major way. But the cistern is refilling and that's good. I mean, it's not a big cause for celebration. I'm just saying if it wasn't refilling, that would be a bad thing. Because I did just flush the toilet. If the cistern wasn't refilling right now, that would be a bad thing. That's why I'm saying the fact that I can hear it, I'm just noting that it's a good thing. Because otherwise, the alternative would be to just let it annoy me. I start recording it again and I hear this loud water gurgling sound over my headphones here. I could just get pissed off about that and say this fucking cistern is refilling. I have to go sit here and wait till it finishes now before I continue my podcast. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to make the best of it and say, the cistern is refilling, that's good. That's a good thing. It means things are working somewhat properly and that's good. Even as I say that, it's nearly finished now. It's quietening down a bit, and that's good as well. I know you're used to these podcasts where everyone complains about everything. They say, oh, look, a wasp just flew into my mouth and I need a piss. I need to go and vomit up the wasp into the sink. And that means I'm going to have to run the tap for 5 minutes and that's going to make noise. No, you see, a wasp just flew into my mouth and I'm very glad that I live in a modern house where I have modern conveniences, where I have a sink that I'm confident enough to vomit a wasp into because I know for some reason, I wouldn't do it in this house, but apparently this person on the podcast you listen to has enough confidence in their ensuite wash hand basin that they can vomit into that and it won't be a problem, it won't block the drains. Most of us mere mortals vomit into our toilet bowls, because we don't have that much confidence in our sinks. If you have a sink that you can trust as a receptacle for your vomit, instead of bending over the toilet and doing it there, you are privileged. Not everyone has that, In fact, a lot of people who are renting, even if they have some confidence in the sink, wouldn't do it anyway because they'd be afraid for some reason it would affect their deposit. I rented a bed sitting room in Rat Mines in the mid-2000s. One day I was cheerfully, I don't know what I was doing. I think I just had a piss or a shower or I was doing something with the kitchen sink, but apparently I left the tap on. Someone came up from downstairs saying, do you know there's water dripping into my apartment? And I say, that's a bit American calling it an apartment. It's a one-room bedsit, and it's barely that. It's barely a room. Unless yours is better. I don't think it is. It seems unlikely because I'm in the new wing that's being added on at the back of the house, and you're directly underneath me in the same wing. So presumably your apartment is the same size as mine. In fact, possibly smaller because some of that wing would be taken up by the downstairs hall. So is your flat even smaller than mine? I don't know. Oh, I suppose that wouldn't matter since the way these things are designed, your bathroom is probably directly under my bathroom and your kitchenette is directly under my kitchenette. The water goes straight down, so you're fucked. So I can see why you have a concern about that. If you're thinking, oh, I can just go and puke into the sink, not worry about it, you're privileged. Now go and find a plunger. Don't leave that for someone else to clean up. Go and plunge it. Even if you can't see the wasp in the sink and you're confident that it's disappeared successfully, get a plunger. Make sure there's nothing blocking that thing. have a bit of manners. Someone else is going to come in and use that. They brush their teeth and then they see the sink not draining and think, what in the name of Christ was in my cavities to cause that? Did I eat some dry, what's that called? What you Americans call a drywall, I think. Plaster. Did I eat some plaster or something? Anyway, there are no flying insects whatsoever in this room at this moment, as far as I can ascertain. Well, that's not entirely true. This isn't as far as I can ascertain. I've barely even looked or listened. I only mentioned that because about 3 times in the last year I've started segments going, there's a wasp in here, or there's a fly in here, or there's an imaginary wasp not in here, or whatever. Since it's the middle of February now and it's cold, I think they're finally all dead. Now, their offspring are probably coming to life now. Supposedly, we're led to believe by our education system, we're asked and expected to believe that these flying insects all die and a whole new generation of them just magically appears in the spring. Their parents are all dead, there's nobody to give birth to them, but a whole new generation of flying insects just appears out of nowhere. And they say, oh, nature's coming back to life. Now, we can understand it with the birds. The birds all go abroad somewhere. They go on holidays for the winter. They fly south. And then they fly north for the summer for some reason. They want to be somewhere colder for the summer or something. They come back and then they have their kittens here or whatever it is they do. At least they're not dead. They've just gone away for a while and come back. But no, we're expected to believe with the flying insects, the wasp dies. And then 3 months later, its son gets born somehow and starts up again. That's nonsense. That's absolute bollocks. If you're a child listening to this, firstly, you shouldn't be listening to this. It's unsuitable for children. But if you are a child listening to this, or a parent whose child is in the room with you hearing this, I'd like you to put your children straight on this. And if you're a child listening to this on your own, ask your parents to explain this to you properly. An insect can't just be born out of nowhere months after its parents died. No, my parents are dead. I wasn't born after they were dead. Both of them were still alive when they were born. Now, it is possible to be born and have one of your parents already dead before that happens. And there was a time when lots of mothers died in childbirth, but that was a different thing. That was a different thing altogether. There's no one going, oh, both of my parents died 6 years before I was conceived. No, that's except in a few special cases where they're doing stuff in laboratories. Wasps are not going around doing things in laboratories. So no. Where are the wasps coming from? Is there something involving a cocoon or an egg or something? Who sits on the egg? An egg needs to be sat on. At least with chickens, we're told, oh, they come from an egg. The hen sits on the egg, keeps it warm. If it's not warm, it warms it up. This warmth is coming from its arse somehow. You put fuel into the hen in the form of corn or whatever you feed to the hen, and that fuel is what heats up the hen, and that heat goes into the egg and that warms up the egg and then keeps it warm. But we're also supposed to believe that if you freeze your eggs, that keeps them alive as well. We're told the chicken keeps its eggs warm so it can survive and create life. But we're also told that you can preserve your eggs by freezing them. You can make them so cold that they freeze, completely freeze over, like the North Pole, and that somehow preserves them. You can keep them somewhere for years and years and years, and your eggs are all frozen, but there is still potential for life in there in the frozen depths. Your own personal little ice age. It's like you can put in a little ice age between your generation and the next. Now, maybe humans can do that because we have laboratories, but wasps are not doing that. The wasp isn't going, oh, I'm going to freeze my eggs now. It's really cold. I don't really have a choice. They're going to freeze anyway, so I'll just freeze them somewhere. I'll leave them down here in this cold place. Maybe I'll grow up the mountains somewhere where there's snow for much of the winter and they'll stay frozen. And then I'll let them thaw out in the summer. Months after I'm dead, they'll thaw out. And then what? That's just bollocks. Ask your teacher to explain that to you if you're a child. and ask your pupil to explain that to you if you're a teacher. Or else both of you go on a joint learning exhibition on a journey, because you like doing that, your little investigative journeys. Go on a nature walk with some magnifying glasses. Have a look at what's going on in the hedgerows right now. See if you see a load of frozen baby wasps somewhere just waiting to be hatched, or what? And you see a load of wasp corpses from last year lying beside them, with a note beside them saying, "Please take my offspring that they put in a little Moses basket." What's a Moses basket? I presume it's that thing in the Bible. Wasn't Moses left in the basket in a river somewhere? And they call that a Moses basket because it's a basket in which you put your Moses. But there's only ever been one of those, unless everyone's calling their child Moses. No. Whereas people who have something called a Moses basket, but they don't have a child called Moses. I don't know. Anyway, if you are that person in the production suite of a televised wrestling event, now, I don't know if you're a television production person or a live event production person, or if those are both the same thing, because I presume these wrestling shows, that's a live sporting event. They're not all made just for television. Some of them are live events that are for the spectators who attend. So I presume in a sport, you have people who are producing the sport to be visible to everyone in the stadium. And then you have other people who do this in a way visible to everybody on their sofa, which is a different thing. You use cameras for that. I suppose they use cameras in the stadium as well for the spectators. They presume they have a big screen. I haven't been to a lot of sporting events. I've been to music events in stadiums, and they usually have a big screen. The first half hour before it started, there was a giant picture of Billy Joel's face. And that's how you knew you were at the right event. Anyway, if you're one of these people and you're producing one of these live wrestling events, it was WWF. There was a legal battle with the World Wildlife Federation. So you had to stop calling it the WWF. So then you changed it to the WWE. Now, I'd like you to try swapping the letters around every now and then and see if anyone notices. Try putting WEW and then try putting EWE. Now, that's going to be a problem because you only have one E. I suppose you can duplicate the one E, but it's all digital. You can do that, can't you? Unless it's not a... I don't mean you have to change the physical signs and add an E to it. No. Well, EWE. Now, that spells you, which I think is a name for a baby lamb, if that's right, or a baby sheep or something. I think so. I'll see if anyone notices. Start by just being discreet, just put 3 W's or turn the E slightly on its side so it looks like more like a W or an M, or try changing one of the W's to M and stuff like that. And then eventually change it. You have to wait a while. Changing the first letter is a big change. So you want to build up to that because people are going to notice that straight off if you're not careful. Call it WMW or WWW or WEW or put the E backwards at the end or something. And then eventually build it up and go EWE. See if anyone notices. Because my theory is that they will notice. People notice these things. Let me know how you get on with that. I'd be very interested. Into your head. I was trying to remember the name Bob Newhart in the previous segment, and I failed to do so. And I'm not sure if I should expand very much upon that, because the part of the segment in which I was trying to remember the name Bob Newhart wasn't particularly good. It's probably not going to make the final cut. If I start going on about that now for several minutes, then I'm going to have several minutes of meaningless drivel that's of no relevance. I suppose that's not really a problem. That's kind of what the programme does. Bob Newhart was a comedian who died quite recently. He had a sitcom and he did comedy, stand-up storytelling. He went on a Aer Lingus transatlantic flight in the 1990s. These in-flight entertainment audio channels. There was always one audio channel that said comedy. Well, it was half of an audio channel because they have 2 programs on it. You'd listen through some other shit. There would be maybe jazz music or something for an hour. And then eventually the comedy program would come on. Bob Newhart was always included. He talked about some explorer who'd either been to America or been to England from America, and he'd come back telling everyone about how everyone's shoving tobacco into their mouths and setting it on fire. That sort of thing. Then they invented television channels on planes. Nobody's impressed by audio anymore. Before people could speak, we were producing audio. We were controlling the level of our grunts. A big loud grunt would mean one thing, and a shallow grunt would mean something else. You had to pick your words carefully in those days because you only had one word, and that was You had to go You pick your words. You say, what word will I use today? I'll use that word. But I'll choose how I pronounce it, because one word, the first ever word ever invented on this planet was a grunt. You had to use that word for everything. People like to complain now about words having more than one meaning. This word had millions of meanings. I was listening to a thing last night where they said the English language is thought to have something like 150,000 words, which is quite small, because then it said some other language has over 1 billion words. So the English language is considered quite small. I don't know how they know that, for one thing. If you think of a word like glip that isn't in the dictionary, and you look it up in that dictionary and it's not there, that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just means the dictionary either doesn't know about it. More likely, the dictionary has decided, here's how big we're going to make the dictionary. We'll fit as much as we can into that number of pages. Anything else can just not exist. Now, how does that work exactly? If you create more words, you have to delete some, surely. Unless the dictionary is infinite. I suppose you can have an infinite dictionary online. Infinitely expanding, anyway. The first ever word that was invented was a grunt. Presumably it was in use for a long time before there were any second words created, because nobody really understood that it was a word. It was just the one sound they made, and that one word meant everything. If you had a dictionary in those days, it would just be one entry, 5 million different meanings, just as useless as a normal dictionary. Absolutely pointless. So you look through a normal dictionary, you say, what am I going to say today? I want to say something new today. Let me have a look at this dictionary and see if I can find something to say. Suppose you could open a page at random. Is it really random though? There's no such thing as opening a page at random. You're going, I'm going to open the page about a quarter of the way through. That's not random. You're choosing consciously a page that's a quarter of the way in. That's not random. You open that. The first word you see, peculiar. And you think, no, I don't want to be peculiar. For one thing, if I have to say that loads of times, you have to deal with all the P popping. The P popping when you say peculiar is going to be a pain in the arse to edit. So you don't pick peculiar, you pick elocution. Going to use that in a sentence today. And then you say, wait, a sentence, so I have to have other words as well. So what other words will I use in that sentence? You open another page and it says Labrador. Labrador. So Labrador elocution. Okay, what else? Tripe. Once upon a time, there was a dog. 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 Oh, now that's interesting. If you've been listening to this for a few months, you'll have noticed I went through a phase last year. I was starting the occasional segment where once upon a time there was a dog. A dog. A dog. Basically a dog. I was explaining each time that I enjoy how my mouth feels when I make that noise. And a couple of weeks ago I grew up and started just saying dog. Once upon a time there was a dog. A dog. A dog. And that's less taxing on the throat and everything. Because you can't be doing the dog thing forever. Well, now I find today I'm doing the dog thing. And it seems to be evolving into something more straining and energetic. and possibly even more damaging than going dog, a habit from which I thought I'd officially graduated myself a few weeks ago. But no, now I've gone on to say dog. Today I've been going a dog, a dog, a dog. I'm actually shaking my head violently, but it's more vibrating than shaking. I say that because to count as shaking your head, it would have to be moving at least 2 inches each way. And I was shaking my head, but it wasn't moving anywhere near 2 inches. It was moving a tiny bit, so I would consider that vibration. It was vibrating violently. My head was moving a tiny distance, but doing it violently, putting more energy into a smaller amount of movement. That's what makes it more violent. Saying the word dug should not be an act of violence, especially not against yourself. There's enough violence in the dog community without me injuring myself just by saying dug, dug, dug. It's getting worse now. Dug, dug. I can feel my tonsils trying to force themselves out of my mouth. It's probably a good thing. I remember when I was 5 or 6 years of age, I remember going to the doctor, being brought to the doctor with a cough or something and being told I would have to have my tonsils out. I would be put on a waiting list. And that's the last I heard of it. That was the early 1980s. But my tonsils also turned out to be perfectly fine. I was just an overzealous doctor, which I think is not surprising now I think about it. Because that town I lived in when I was 5 or 6, I lived in a town called Thomastown in County Kilkenny for the first few years of my life. I remember my father's doctor there. To my eyes, anyway, looked exactly like this fella Charles Mitchell, who used to present the evening television news bulletin. I remember once he came as a house visitor for some reason, and then he was on the television reading the news 10 minutes later. I was very impressed. Very, very impressed. He's probably not there anymore. Charles Mitchell died some time ago, so I presume the doctor, who was also him, was also either retired or dead. After Charles Mitchell, the newsreader, died, I bet you he found he got a lot less new patients. The people weren't seeing the free advertisement for him for half an hour every night on the television, going, "Oh, look, there's your man, Charles Mitchell." Which I think he's the general practitioner in the doctor's outlet down the town. In those days, big retail outlets and doctors' outlets and things like that, they weren't shoved into some new business park out on the edge of the town that nobody can walk to because it's out on some motorway. No. In those days, the doctor's outlet and the supermarket and the library and the retail outlet and the place where you go to bring back your bottles and get your deposit returned, they were in something called a town. We had these things called towns, even in villages, at the main street, and there was stuff in the main street. There was actually shops there. They weren't all barricaded up. There wasn't signs on every shop front saying, "Oh, we don't exist here anymore. Please go out to the new out-of-town shop place where we keep all the shops." And some thing out in the middle of nowhere. They have a bus stop for it. You can get off the bus, then you cross the road, and then you go up the road a few feet, but you follow the footpath and it goes all over the place. You get a 3-hour walk just to go up to this fucking place. And then the doctor says, "I see you got your morning walk today. Isn't that great?" And then he says, "Wait a minute. Our doctor just got assaulted. I need to include this in the news bulletin tonight." And then you say, "Excuse me, you're not the news reader." Anyway, oh yes, the dog thing. I was going on about the dog. The dog. The dog. The dog. That town. There was a St. Bernard dog in that town called Ivor. I lived there till I was 6. We had neighbours who had a dog called Ivor, who was a St. Bernard dog. A St. Bernard dog, a breed of dog, is named after, presumably, St. Bernard. Now, I don't know who he is, but I had a French teacher many years later whose name was Bernard. I associate the name Bernard with large floppy ears and the French accent. The Bernard, who was the French teacher, he wasn't French. He didn't have a French accent, but he would speak in a French accent. just to show off. He'd say, "Blah, blah, 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 look at me, I'm French." We had this language laboratory in the school. You'd sit there, you'd wear headphones, and you'd listen to a recording of the teacher saying stuff in French, and you'd repeat after it. And he'd be listening in individually on each student. You'd be sitting there quietly repeating the words on your headphones. Then you'd hear a little crackle on your headphones, and that would be your sign that the teacher is listening in individually to your headset. And then he'll start correcting you and saying stuff, or he'll say, "Speak up," or he'll say, "You're not saying anything." And then he'll say, "This is a huge invasion of my privacy." And then the same generation now wonders why everyone wants to, or wonders why everyone wants to do something that I was about to say that wouldn't have made any sense. Well, that's why. That's why. I think what I was about to say is that's why that teacher's generation now obsesses over people on buses and trains who like to listen to audio that without earphones. They play it over the speaker. I think you'll agree that makes no sense in this context. That makes no sense in this context at all. Unless I'm claiming that somehow the French teacher listening in, as is his job, listening in on each individual student in their audio booth as they practice their French oration, that somehow taught us to start playing stuff in public on our phones over the speaker instead of on earphones. No, that's clearly nonsense. The reason people started playing stuff on speakers on trains and buses is because the driver sets the bad example. The driver comes on. Half the time the driver plays his favourite music station over the speakers and expects us to listen to that, but we're not supposed to play anything on the speakers. We're supposed to wear headphones. No, we're not even driving. We're not even driving, and we're not allowed to play stuff over the speakers. But the driver is, and then sometimes there'll be a recorded voice predicting what the next stop is going to be, with an accuracy rate of approximately 70% in my experience. And then, of course, the driver shuts that off because he's sick of listening to it all day. He says, "I'm sick to death of this person saying what the next stop is." He has to hear it twice now. The announcements on public transport are now played in English and Irish to make sure it's all drilled into us that we have a dead language that needs to be kept alive. And rightly so. If you were a dead person, if you went into some hospital and your heart had stopped or your brain had stopped, whichever one stops first, but the other one was still working, they wouldn't just go, "Oh, that's a dead person. Just leave him at the door there. Leave it out in the car park. We'll put him in the wheelie bin later." No. You turn up at a hospital half dead. You expect full undivided attention of several highly trained medical personnel. And the same is true of a language. The Irish language, according to some, is dying. According to others, is dead. According to others, is too hard. According to others, we don't really care one way or the other. According to others, it's fine, but get over it. If a dead language turned up somewhere, you wouldn't say, "Oh, that's dead. Fuck it. That's dead. Give up." No. In this country, when you have a dead language, they say, "Drill this into everyone. Drill it into every child in the country, whether they want it or not. Drill it into every bus user, whether they want it or not." You get on a bus at 5 o'clock in the morning, you hear someone going, "The next stop is Newtown Mount Kennedy. Begong next stop at Newtown Mount Kennedy." Takes twice as long for the announcements to go through. So disturbs you for twice as long. That's the best way to preserve a language. Use it to annoy the fuck out of people at 5 o'clock on a Monday morning when they're at their grumpiest. So they do that, quite rightly. So no, you turn up at an A&E and say, "Oh, I'm half dead. The vast majority of the country don't even speak me anymore. My brain has stopped. That's why I'm coming out with all this crap out of my mouth, because my brain is not connected to it. It's just automatic. It's like I'm speaking in tongues. I've been taken over by some demon or the opposite of a demon. They take over and you start saying stuff, you go, blah, 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 blah. And apparently it was some language It's not of this earth. And if you're speaking in tongues, I can tell you better have a good explanation for anyone who's around you. If you don't make one up, if you don't have an explanation for them, people are going to fill in the gaps with their own explanations. They're going to say, oh, he's speaking in tongues because he's doing drugs. Or he's speaking in tongues because he's trying to confuse everybody. Or he's speaking in tongues because he's secretly invented free wireless electricity and he has it plugged into his neck and it's making his tongue vibrate all day because he enjoys the feeling. Got addicted to it. He started off by going, once upon a time there was a dog on his podcast and he enjoyed the feeling in the back of his tongue when he was going, dog, dog, dog. And he decided, oh, I happen to have a free electricity generator that I've invented. If I can make up a prototype of that, I could use that to vibrate the back of my throat all day, whether I'm speaking or not. I could have a little contraption I'll put in my pocket. No, I was going to say battery operated, but if it's free electricity, there's no need for battery. Now, it's not perfected yet, so when my tongue vibrates, because of the nature of the tongue is designed to make noises, so my tongue makes noises when it vibrates, but that's a side effect. It's not meant to mean anything, so when you hear me talking in tongues, that's just the sound of me enjoying myself. Like when someone eats noisily. I suppose it's a bit rude, but I'm working on it. Give me a break. I've invented free electricity, something that could change the world forever for the better, and you want to nickel and dime me about the fact that I make noises with my tongue while I'm enjoying it. Give me a break, you arsehole. That's what they'd say anyway. If you came across that on the bus, of course you won't. You won't. People don't talk in tongues on buses anymore. In fact, I don't think I've ever, not even once, come across anyone on the bus who was genuinely speaking in tongues. No, I've heard people speaking with their tongues. Everyone does that. Everyone uses their tongue to speak. Speaking in tongues is a different thing. Well, I presume it is. I've never witnessed it. I don't know. Do you young people even know what a tongue is? You probably don't. In my day, you go down to your local butcher. I think we'll have tongue for dinner today. Have vague recollections of it. I think it was like having bacon. You'd have it with cabbage and mashed potato. I do have a recollection of once being sent out for the first time ever when I was 5 or 6 to the local shop for 4 slices of lean ham. I remember being very proud of myself. I can't remember if I said it to the shopkeeper or just showed him the note. I came home with what I presume was 4 slices of lean ham. I can't remember whether I was told did I get it right or not. I don't know. I presume I did. Well, you never know, because that's the same shop where I bought that edible paper once. Thomastown was a weird place. There was still a place called Thomastown. I'm not talking about the place called Thomastown, though. I'm talking about the place that was called Thomastown in the early 1980s, which is geographically the same place. I'm assuming it's changed since then. So it may well be different in real life than what it was through my 5-year-old eyes as remembered by my quite significantly older than 5 years memory. Anyway, I think we had tongue for dinner. That's all I'm saying. I think we had tongue for dinner, but I might be misremembering it. I do remember it being said that we were having tongue for dinner. I don't remember if I remember right what it was like. I imagine when I think of a human tongue, I presume if a cow's tongue is anything like that, it could be similar to a piece of boiled bacon or ham. I don't see why not. Big red thing, red or pink. What colour is a tongue? Is it red or pink? Depends what you've been eating, I suppose. You've been eating sweets that have green stuff on them. Some weird purple or green chewing gum. There's licorice. Your tongue could be a variety of different colours. Whatever they're feeding the cows that they get the tongue out of. I presume the tongue changes colour after you're dead anyway. So if you're getting a tongue, it's from a dead cow. The colour changes, I presume. Oh, I don't know. Does anyone really know what colour a tongue is? We only see them inside someone's mouth from a distance, an unlit mouth. Most people's mouths do not have lighting inside them. Any other small cubbyhole like that you come across in the modern world. If you had a little cupboard that was set into the wall where you keep your ornaments and things, you'd often have a light set into the ceiling of that cubby hole. The human mouth doesn't have that. Now, a cow's mouth doesn't have it either. An animal's mouth is horseshoe shaped. The light isn't just coming straight in from the front. If it was, that would be a problem because you're looking in from the front. You're blocking all the light that might go into the mouth. If it's an animal, no, the light can get in at the sides, or you can look in from the side of the mouth and let the light come in from the front, whichever works. And of course, the animal's dead. You can just open the mouth as far as you want and not do any further harm to it. Have a good look at what colour the tongue is, and then you find out from your foreman or whoever's in charge of whatever you're doing. Maybe you're in a meat plant and you're saying, "Is that the colour the tongue is supposed to be?" And they'll say, "I've no idea. I've absolutely no idea. I'm not a fucking vet. I supervise a conveyor belt where we put dead cows. I've been working as a foreman in factories all my life, but this place is different. Everywhere I've worked until now, you put a little part on the conveyor belt. Parts get added to it, and whatever's on the conveyor belt gets bigger and fancier as it goes along. And by the time it gets to the end of the conveyor belt, you have a full product, and then you put it in packaging. This one, it's different. We put a full cow on the conveyor belt. By the time you get to the end of it, it's all branched off into different conveyor belts. The tongue goes along one branch. The teeth go along another branch to be made into jewellery or whatever they do with cows' teeth. The skin goes along to some textile conveyor belt. They turn it into leather trousers. This place is a disassembly plant, if anything. It's for disassembling and recycling a cow, including the tongue, as we've established. And I suppose at some point, once you've disassembled a cow, you get to the point eventually where it doesn't matter whether you can shine a light into the cow's mouth because you have the stuff that made up the cow's mouth is all disassembled and you just have the tongue on its own and then you can see its colour quite easily if you need to. You say, "Oh, that tongue's looking a bit grey. I don't think that cow's very well." He said that to the foreman. He'd say, "You fucking idiot. What colour would you expect a dead tongue that's not on a cow to be?" And of course, any intelligent young man who's maybe on a summer job, maybe he's in some big fancy university, but he's doing this factory meat plant thing during the summer to have a bit of experience of real life. And he's saying, "I don't know what colour a tongue will be in a living cow's mouth." Oh, wait a minute, where am I going with that? Oh, I've confused myself now. Suffice to say, whatever colour is on a tongue on its own on the conveyor belt, it's not going to be whatever colour you expect it to be in a cow's mouth. It's most likely going to be different because it derives its colour from whatever is flowing into its nerves via the cow. They probably just dye it anyway, do they? We let our children put food colouring on their tongues. They eat licorice and all sorts of dyed sweets and things that make their tongue go green and all sorts of shit. So why wouldn't we do it to a dead cow's tongue that we're trying to market as food? I don't see any reason why not.